1st, 1955, Rosa Parks and 3 other blacks sat on the 5th row of a bus, which was the first row the blacks could occupy. A few stops later, the first 4 rows filled with whites, and 1 man was left standing. The 4 blacks were asked to get up. All 3 agreed except for Rosa Parks, and she was arrested. That night, Joey and Robinson handed out flyers asking people to boycott the Montgomery buses. All the blacks agreed, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which was minister at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, said that if 60% cooperation was attained, that the boycott would be a success. He was pleasantly surprised the next morning when bus after empty bus rolled by his house. All ministers in Montgomery were hoping that the boycott would be a one-day success. The Montgomery Improvement Association was very pleased with this, but the whites weren't so happy. They turned to the law on February 21st, 1989, and blacks were indicted under an old law prohibiting boycotts. Blacks returned to the buses on December 21st, 1956, over a year after the first boycott was started. The snipers shot at buses, forcing the city to suspend bus operations after 5 p.m. 2 black leaders, 4 Baptist churches, the People's Service Station at Cavsan, and the home of another black was also bombed. 7 white men were arrested for the bombings, and 5 were indicted.
I need you to move.
No.
Well, I'm just gonna have you arrested.
Go ahead then.
Officer, I need to have this young lady arrested.
Ma'am, you in the color section?
Well, I want her arrested.
Ma'am, you're gonna have to come with me.
Aren't you riding the bus today?
We're boycotting.
Pressure increased across the country, and on June 4, 1956, a federal district court ruled that Alabama's racial segregation laws were unconstitutional. However, an appeal kept the Boycott Act until finally, on November 13, 1956, the Supreme Court upheld the lower court's decision. This victory led to a city ordinance which allowed black bus passengers to sit virtually wherever they wanted. The boycott officially ended on December 21, 1956. Martin Luther King capped off the victory with a magnificent speech to encourage the acceptance of the decision. The boycott resulted in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement receiving one of its first victories, and gave Martin Luther King the national attention that he would need to become one of its prime ministers. The very beginning of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference can be traced back to the Montgomery bus boycott. Since the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was not actually a conference, but rather an organization that had conferences, we chose 3 of its main movements. 60 persons from 10 states gathered and announced the founding of the Southern Leadership Conference on Transportation and Nonviolent Integration. They issued a document declaring that civil rights are essential to democracy, segregation must end, and that black people should reject all types of segregation, absolutely and nonviolently. Further organization was done at a meeting in New Orleans, Louisiana, on February 14, 1957. The organization shortened its name to Southern Leadership Conference and then changed it again in August of 1957 to the current name, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. On the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference held simultaneously mass meetings in 21 southern cities, launching its campaign to double the number of black registered voters in the South. Martin Luther King delivered a speech to an overflow audience at Miami's Greater Bethel AME Church following an introduction by Pastor S.A. Cousin. He compares the crusade for citizenship to the efforts of women and poor whites to obtain the franchise. He also calls on the federal government to use its powers to convince Southern public officials to adhere to the Constitution by holding free elections. We have a duty to remove from political denomination a small minority that cripples the economic and social institutions of our nation and thereby degrades and impoverishes everyone.
The history of our nation is the history of a long and tireless effort to broaden and to increase the franchise of American citizens. At the very birth of our nation, a great struggle had to be made to secure the ballot for people who did not own property. Even among the founding fathers, there were men who felt that only those who owned property should have the right to vote. Over this issue, a mighty struggle took place. When after many long years, this fight was successfully won, a great effort was made by women seeking to obtain the franchise. Again, after weary decades of agitation, the glorious fight for women's suffrage succeeded, and the 19th Amendment of the Constitution opened a new chapter in the lives of women and in the life of our nation. Thus we see that from 1789 to 1920, disenfranchised Americans fought and won their basic right to vote. However, for the Negroes of the South, there was still no ballot. Whether they owned property or were penniless, whether male or female, these American victories and the extension of democracy did not affect them. This history does provide a profound lesson for the voteless Negroes. It teaches us how to struggle and win. We see that the poor men of 1776 did not accept disenfranchisement without protest. In a legal manner, these pioneers fought as hard for the right to vote as they had fought as Minutemen at Lexington and Concord. They fought. They did not get weary. They finally won citizenship status for themselves and for their children. Later, when women decided the time had come for them to vote, they were far from submissive or silent. They cried out in the halls of government. They agitated in their homes. They protested in the streets. And they were jailed. They pressed on. Their voices were vigorous, even strident. They were always effective. Through their courage, their steadfastness, their unity, and their willingness to sacrifice, they won the right to vote. From these women, we have learned a great lesson of how social change takes place through struggle. In this same tradition of determination, of confidence in the justice of a cause, Negroes must now demand the right to vote. And these qualities of courage, perseverance, unity, sacrifice, plus a non-violence of spirit are the weapons we must depend upon if we are to vote with freedom. Vote we must. But the inability of Negroes to vote is not only unjust, it is a very real embarrassment to our nation, which we love and must protect. For a number of years, I have been reading with great interest of the tireless and indefatigable effort of our Secretary of State, Mr. Dulles, to obtain free election in Germany. Free elections in Europe are the sine qua non, a most important part of our foreign policy. And I sincerely hope that people the world over shall live under governments where elections can be free. However, I feel, and I know you feel, that the American government must begin the struggle for democracy at home. Therefore, on behalf of millions of disenfranchised American citizens, I earnestly invite and call upon the United States government to use the constitutional power it has to convince the governors and legislators of Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and other southern states to adhere to the United States Constitution. They should convince these governors and legislators to hold free elections. The advocacy of free elections in Europe by American officials is hypocrisy when free elections are not held in great sections of America. The Negro Americans, it is ironic to be governed, to be taxed, to be given orders, but to have no representation in a nation that would defend the right to vote abroad. We have a duty to deliver our nation from this snare. We Southerners, Negro and white, must no longer permit our nation and our heritage to be dishonored before the world. And the South should know that the effort of Negroes to vote is not merely a matter of exercising rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution. The question is beyond rights. We have a duty to perform. We have a moral obligation to carry out. We have the duty to remove from political denomination a small minority that cripples the economic and social institutions of our nation and thereby degrades and impoverishes everyone. Beyond this, it is our duty to struggle by nonviolence for justice, because we are opposed to all injustices, wherever it exists, first of all, in ourselves.
We'll pick up a pizza, pineapple, ham, and put it in the back of a Good Times van. We'll go out and pick up the rest of the band. We're gonna have a good time. Yeah, Lily, about it.
That's it.
I'm sure you're recording. Ish. You see the little red dot? It means we're recording.
History of reading with a great interest of the tireless and